Ahead tonight, the BC saga heats up as another feud unfolds over a new roster system.
And it's back to court today for Rodney Monker. We'll tell you why.
Plus, it's been 33 years since the sinking of the HMBS Flamingo. The Defense Force remembers its heroes. The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This segment of the news is brought to you by BTC, powered by Lime.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Candino Knowles.
And I'm Charisma Robinson. Like always, it's good to have you joining us.
Well, Bahamians speaking out tonight about the Bahamas Electrical Workers Union's move to bring legal action against the power company over a new roster system.
BEC's chairman Leslie Miller implemented the system to cut the corporation's monthly $1 million overtime bill, but the union says no way. A new roster system at the Bahamas Electricity Corporation may be in limbo. The Bahamas Electrical Workers Union have asked lawyers to file an injunction to reverse the new working arrangement at BEC.
As it stands now, employees of BEC have been forced to work the legal rostering system. And instead of withdrawing our labor and taking steps like that, we decided to go the legal route to show Mr. Miller and the corporation that they cannot unilaterally change the terms and conditions of any agreement.
But BEC's chairman Leslie Miller says he's appalled by the move, as the corporation is only taking measures that will eventually reduce its high operational cost. Flexi time and rostering was implemented in March to enable BEC to cut down on the reported $12 million in overtime. The union from the onset opposed this initiative and filed a trade dispute on April 19th, but it appears as if that wasn't enough.
Filing of the actions in the Supreme Court was in bad faith, to say the least. Duplicitous and an abuse of the court's process. In other words, you are here before the Labour Board. Why would you now go to court when the Labour Board hasn't even heard the case yet? It's nonsensical, and it shows you the high-handed attitude they're taking towards the corporation. Even while we go before the Labour Board so that they could make a ruling on it, you go to court. It's duplicitous. And since instead of going one way, they're using all of the procedures necessary to enable them to get what they want.
The chairman is not backing down. He says BC has a fight to win.
With the current economic state of the country, judges are people just like you and I. If we can show them what the situation is with BC, I think they would ask the union to step back and appreciate the fact that you do have a well-paying job. You have all the benefits that many Bahamians do not have. And why don't you be reasonable people and go back to work and allow the flexi time and the rostering to enable us to decrease the overburdensome amount that we pay for overtime.
Now here's what a few BEC consumers who did not want to be identified had to say on the matter.
I think it needs to be cut out because you can't have one man in the hole and three standing up.
They wait for the money, the overtime. I think it's just that they should be paid, and that ain't have nothing to do with the electricity going up or down. It's just being fair. If a man works, he should be paid.
We can't afford it, we can't afford it. That's how I looking at it. And then again, people saying unemployment. You asking for extra money, that's more space for other people to come on and find jobs.
Mr. Miller says BC will continue with its plans to curb overspending. He says the corporation remains committed to working with the union in the best interests of its members, BC and Bahamians.
Well, the nation's chief is responding to a former cabinet minister's call for an independent probe into the finances of the state-run power company. On Wednesday, former minister with responsibility for BEC, Loftus Roker, held a press conference saying that something is seriously wrong at BEC and insisted that Prime Minister Perry Christie appoint an independent body to investigate. The hefty electricity bills consumers have had to pay have been blamed on the cost of fuel. But Mr. Roker says he doesn't believe fuel costs has anything to do with BEC's current financial state and says Mr. Christie might be shocked at the findings. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
But I think what he should be aware of when it comes down to personal integrity in the operations of BEC, it's a matter of fact. We'll have to see what that is and what it amounts to. When it comes down to BEC serving the best interests of the people, we are well on our way in that regard. And so, but it is very, very difficult. We are fully aware that given the proposals we have seen for the generation of electricity, there are people who are proposing to substantially, including the new board of BEC, substantially reduce the cost of electricity by cost savings, by more efficient management.
Government keeping its commitment to improve public services nationwide, and today Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson and State Minister for Legal Affairs Damian Gomez visited Eleuthera today to do just that.
Residents in Eleuthera no longer have to travel to Nassau for legal documents such as birth certificates thanks to this new and improved technology.
Higher project is really the mandate of our Prime Minister, who is adamant that we will be seen truly as one nation. We are an island nation, and people who live in the far-flung islands should feel that their government cares about them and that they are entitled to the same kinds of services that exist in Nassau. So rather than spending $500 before you get a service you can get in your own community, let's provide our people, as the Prime Minister has dictated, services in their own community.
Residents on the islands of Abaco and Eleuthera are among those benefiting from the new e-service.
State Minister for Legal Affairs Damian Gomez explains exactly what services are available online.
Well, we intend to bring e-government to the entire Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We are hopeful that we can achieve a lot of it during the next few years. Today, we are bringing the birth certificates, death certificates, and marriage certificates, the availability of those online to Eleuthera. We've already done that in Marsh Harbor, Abaco, and to date, we have received glowing reports of its utility to the community in Abaco, and we are confident that we will have a similar response in Eleuthera.
Well, the Rodney Moncur case won't end up in the Supreme Court as anticipated, which the community activist isn't too thrilled about. Moncur returned to the magistrate court today, hoping to learn that he would be tried by a jury of his peers in the Supreme Court, but that didn't happen. As Foreign Carey tells us, the prosecution has decided to deal with the case differently.
Well-known community activist Rodney Moncur returned to the magistrate court Friday morning, expecting to be served with voluntary bill of indictment papers, which would have fast-tracked his case to the Supreme Court. Instead, the court informed Moncur that the matter will proceed by preliminary inquiry, which means that evidence will be taken in the magistrate court, and once that is completed, the prosecution will decide whether or not there is sufficient evidence against Moncur for trial. You may recall that 56-year-old Moncur was arraigned last month before Deputy Chief Magistrate Carolina Bethel on a charge of publicly committing an indecent act by posting a photo of the body of 35-year-old Jamie Smith on his Facebook page sometime between March 1st and March 29th of this year. Meantime, during the proceedings, Moncur, who appeared unhappy with the prosecution's decision to proceed by preliminary inquiry, asked the court if he could respond, but the court did not agree. The court then informed Moncur that her calendar is full until December and asked him if he wanted an earlier date, but Moncur informed her that he did not want her to deal with the case due to a conflict of interest. The case was then transferred to Court Number 2. And during those proceedings in Court Number 2, Moncur was rearraigned on the same charge. Following the arraignment, he asked the court to reduce his $7,500 bail and requested full disclosure of all the evidence in the case, including the digital evidence, alleging that it is, quote, a show trial. Moncur spoke to reporters outside court.
Justice being dragged. This is justice being stabbed in its most vital parts. I want you to learn this quote. This is justice being stabbed in its most vital parts. Because if you're concerned about justice, swift justice. This morning, I should have been given my voluntary bill of indictment. I should have been told exactly the time that I should be appearing before one of the judges of the Supreme Court so that the allegation can be read to me once again. Let us not forget, even if I were to be convicted, the fine is only $150, And guess what? For $150, I'm on bail for $7,500.
In the end, the court adjourned the matter to August 15th and 16th. At that time, the preliminary inquiry, which will determine whether there's enough evidence against Rodney Monker, will begin. Fern Carey, ZNS Network News.
Now, apart from his court battle, Mr. Monker expressed concerns about a young man who is behind bars. And get this, Monker claims he played a role in the man's arrest.
I'm concerned about a young man who's in Her Majesty's prison by the name of Delgado Moxie, who's been wrongfully accused of breaking into the Urban Renewal Centerville branch office. And I'm sad because I ordered his arrest as one of Her Majesty's Justices of the Peace. And it took me being charged to meet him in the cell and to go to prison with him. That is one of the things that I have to vigorously find an attorney for.
In our first look at weather, the mid-level trough over the northwest Bahamas has pushed off to the east. The surface trough in the southeast has exited to the southeast. And outside of our studios just now, we have just a few clouds. Your temperature 80 degrees, relative humidity 66%. Your winds are out of the south-southeast at 12 knots, barometric pressure 1,018.7 millibars. That's 30.08 inches, and it is steady. But stay tuned. Your temperatures around the family violence, travel, and boating forecast is still to come.
The Defense Force remember 4 of its fallen colleagues.
And many reaching out to help a family in need. Stay with us. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Shell HELIX Ultra. Performance you can see.